In 19th-century Romania, a chance encounter between a noble marquess and a village blacksmith's daughter ignites a passionate romance that defies societal norms. But as their love blossoms, dark secrets from the past threaten to tear them apart. Will their bond be strong enough to overcome the dangers that lurk in the shadows? Join us for a tale of forbidden love, courage, and the power of unity in the face of adversity. You won't believe the twists and turns that await in this thrilling historical romance. Don't forget to comment below and let us know where you're watching from and why you like our stories. Your support means the world to us. The crisp winter air bit at Marquess Nicolae Grigorescu's cheeks as he urged his horses forward through the deepening snow. Twilight was falling rapidly over the Transylvanian mountains, casting long shadows across the winding road. The 38-year-old nobleman pulled his fur-lined coat tighter, his breath forming misty plumes in the frigid air. He had hoped to reach the next town before nightfall, but the storm was worsening by the minute. Nicolae's mind wandered to the warmth of his Bucharest estate, so far removed from this treacherous mountain pass. He had embarked on this journey to inspect some of his family's rural properties, a duty he took seriously despite the protests of his younger brother Constantine. "You're too soft-hearted, Nicolae," Constantine had chided. "Send a steward to deal with the tenants. It's beneath your station to concern yourself with such matters." But Nicolae had insisted. "Our responsibility to those who depend on us doesn't end where convenience begins," he had replied, his tone brooking no argument. Now, as the wind howled around his carriage, Nicolae wondered if perhaps his brother had been right. The thought was banished instantly when a flash of movement caught his eye. Nicolae squinted through the swirling snow, barely making out the outline of an overturned carriage just ahead. His heart raced as he brought his own carriage to a halt. "Whoa," he called to his horses, then turned to his coachman. "Vasile, do you see that?" The grizzled old servant nodded grimly. "Aye, my lord. Looks like someone's in a bad way." "Hello!" Nicolae shouted, leaping down into the knee-deep drift. "Is anyone there?" A faint cry answered him, spurring Nicolae into action. He waded through the snow, the wind whipping at his face. As he neared the wreckage, he saw a woman's hand reaching out from beneath the overturned vehicle. "Hold on!" Nicolae shouted, dropping to his knees beside the carriage. With a grunt of exertion, he heaved against the wooden frame, muscles straining as he lifted it just enough for the trapped passenger to scramble free. She emerged like a vision. A woman of striking beauty, despite her disheveled state. Her long, dark hair was dusted with snow, and her emerald eyes were wide with fear and gratitude. Nicolae estimated her to be in her mid-30s, her face bearing the subtle lines of a life fully lived. "Thank you," she gasped, her voice barely audible above the howling wind. "I thought I was going to die out here." Nicolae helped her to her feet, noticing how she winced and favored her left ankle. "Are you injured, my lady?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. "It's just a sprain, I think," she replied, attempting a brave smile. "I'm Ana Marinescu. Marquess Nicolae Grigorescu," he introduced himself, supporting her weight as they made their way to his carriage. "We need to get you somewhere warm and dry. Is there a place nearby where I can take you?" Ana nodded, pointing down the road. "My family's home is just a few miles ahead. They're blacksmiths in the village." As they settled into Nicolae's carriage, he couldn't help but notice the stark difference between Ana's simple, albeit well-made clothing and his own fine attire. Yet there was a dignity in her bearing that spoke of inner strength and grace. "Vasile," Nicolae called to his coachman, "will be escorting Miss Marinescu to her family's home. It's not far, she says." The old man nodded, a knowing twinkle in his eye. "Very good, my lord. We'll get there safe and sound, storm or no storm." As the carriage lurched forward, Nicolae turned his attention back to Ana. "Tell me, Miss Marinescu, what brings you out in such weather? It's hardly fit for man or beast." Ana's gaze flickered, a shadow passing across her features. "I was returning from visiting a friend," she said, her hesitation almost imperceptible. "I'm afraid I misjudged the weather." Nicolae sensed there was more to her story, but something in Ana's demeanor warned him not to pry further. Instead, he opted for a lighter tone. "Well, it seems fortune favors the foolhardy today. Had I been more sensible, I'd have stayed at the last inn and missed the opportunity to play the gallant rescuer." This elicited a small laugh from Ana, the sound warming the carriage more than any fire could. "And I'm grateful for your lack of sense, my lord. Though I wonder what business brings a marquess to these remote parts." Nicolae smiled, pleased to see some of the tension leave her shoulders. "I'm inspecting some family properties. My brother thinks it's a waste of time, but I believe it's important to understand the lives of those who depend on us." Ana's eyes widened with genuine interest. "That's uncommonly considerate of you. Most nobles I've encountered prefer to rule from afar." "And you've encountered many nobles, have you?" Nicolae asked, his curiosity piqued. A guarded look passed over Ana's face. "More than you might expect for a blacksmith's daughter," she replied carefully. "But tell me, my lord, what do you hope to gain from these inspections?" Nicolae leaned back, considering his words. "Understanding, primarily. It's easy to make decisions from a comfortable study in Bucharest, but the realities on the ground are often quite different. I want to ensure our tenants are treated fairly, that they have what they need to thrive." "That's admirable," Ana said softly, her eyes searching his face as if trying to gauge his sincerity. "But surely it causes friction with other landowners. Such progressive ideas are not always welcome." Nicolae chuckled ruefully. "You're perceptive, Miss Marinescu. Indeed, I've ruffled more than a few feathers, but I believe it's the right thing to do, regardless of the social cost." Their conversation was interrupted as the carriage hit a particularly rough patch of road. Ana winced, her hand going to her injured ankle. "Here," Nicolae said, reaching into a compartment and pulling out a small flask. "It's brandy, for medicinal purposes, of course." Ana accepted the flask with a grateful smile. "Of course," she replied, a hint of mischief in her voice. "Purely medicinal." She took a small sip, the warmth of the liquor bringing color to her cheeks. As they continued their journey, Nicolae found himself drawn deeper into conversation with his mysterious companion. They spoke of books they had read, of the changing world beyond their mountains, and of the simple joys of life that transcended class and station. With each passing moment, Nicolae felt the walls of propriety and social expectation crumbling, replaced by a genuine connection he had rarely experienced. "You're not what I expected, Marquess Grigorescu," Ana said at last, her voice soft and thoughtful. "Nicolae, please," he insisted. "And what did you expect?" Ana's lips curved into a smile. "Someone more aloof, I suppose. Less willing to engage with a humble blacksmith's daughter." Nicolae's gaze met hers, and in that moment, he felt as if he could drown in the depths of her emerald eyes. "Perhaps you're not what I expected either, Ana," he replied, his voice low and earnest. The carriage suddenly came to a halt, breaking the spell that had fallen over them. Vasile's voice called out from the driver's seat, "We've arrived, my lord." As they emerged from the carriage, Nicolae saw a modest but well-kept home on the outskirts of a small village. Light spilled from the windows, and figures were already rushing out to meet them, their faces etched with worry that quickly turned to joy and relief. "Ana," a woman cried, embracing her tightly. "We were so worried." "I'm all right, mother," Ana reassured her, then turned to Nicolae. "Thanks to the Marquess here." Nicolae found himself enveloped in their gratitude, ushered into the warmth of their home as an honored guest. The contrast between the humble surroundings and the genuine warmth of the welcome was not lost on him. "You must stay until the storm passes," Ana's father insisted, his weathered hands clasping Nicolae's in heartfelt thanks. "It's far too dangerous to continue on tonight." As Nicolae helped Ana settle by the roaring fireplace, their eyes met once more. In that moment, a spark of connection passed between them, something deeper than mere gratitude or attraction. It was as if, in the midst of the howling storm, they had both found an unexpected sanctuary. "Thank you," Ana murmured, her hand resting briefly on his arm. "You've saved more than just my life tonight." Nicolae felt a warmth spread through his chest that had nothing to do with the crackling fire. As he gazed into Ana's eyes, he knew with sudden certainty that his impulsive act of kindness on a snowy road had set in motion events that would change the course of both their lives forever. Little did he know that behind Ana's grateful smile lay a secret, one that would test the very foundations of their burgeoning connection and challenge everything Nicolae thought he knew about love, loyalty, and the true measure of a person's worth. As the storm raged outside, Nicolae found himself on the precipice of a journey far more perilous and rewarding than any mountain pass, a journey of the heart. The storm raged on outside, but within the Marinescu home, a warm glow of hospitality enveloped Marquess Nicolae Grigorescu. The modest dwelling, filled with the rich scents of wood smoke and freshly baked bread, stood in stark contrast to the opulent halls Nicolae was accustomed to. Yet, there was a comfort here that surpassed mere luxury. Ana's mother, Elisabetta, bustled about, her weathered hands deftly preparing a simple but hearty meal. "You must be famished, my lord," she said, placing a steaming bowl of ciorba before him. "This will warm you right up." Nicolae breathed in the aromatic soup, a smile tugging at his lips. "It smells wonderful, Mrs. Marinescu. Thank you for your kindness." Ana's father, Gheorghe, a barrel-chested man with kind eyes, settled into a chair across from Nicolae. "It's we who should be thanking you, Marquess. If not for your bravery, our Ana." His voice trailed off, emotion evident in his gruff tone. "Please, call me Nicolae," the Marquess insisted, feeling the formality of his title out of place in this humble setting. "And I only did what any decent person would do." Ana, who had been quietly observing the exchange, spoke up. "Not everyone would have stopped Nicolae, especially not a nobleman in such treacherous conditions." Her green eyes met his, filled with a mixture of gratitude and something deeper that made Nicolae's heart quicken. As they ate, the conversation flowed easily. Nicolae found himself charmed by the family's simple wisdom and genuine warmth. He learned that Gheorghe was not only the village blacksmith, but also a respected elder, often called upon to mediate disputes. "It must be challenging," Nicolae remarked, "balancing the needs of so many." Gheorghe nodded solemnly. "Aye, it can be, but it's not so different from what you do, I'd wager. Whether it's a village or an estate, people are people. They need a firm hand sometimes, but mostly they need to know someone's listening." Nicolae was struck by the parallel. "You're right, of course. It's a perspective I wish more of my peers shared." As the evening wore on, Ana's younger sister, Ileana, brought out a well-worn violin. "Will you play for us, Ana?" she asked, her eyes shining with admiration. Ana hesitated, casting a glance at Nicolae. "Oh, I don't know if our guest would be interested in our simple tunes." "On the contrary," Nicolae said eagerly, "I'd be delighted to hear you play." With a shy smile, Ana took the instrument. As she began to play, Nicolae was transfixed. The melody, hauntingly beautiful, seemed to weave a spell around the room. Ana's fingers danced across the strings with a grace that belied her humble surroundings. Nicolae found himself wondering about the depth of experiences that had shaped this enigmatic woman. When the last note faded, there was a moment of reverent silence before Nicolae spoke. "That was extraordinary, Ana. Where did you learn to play like that?" A shadow flickered across Ana's face. So brief Nicolae almost missed it. "Oh, here and there," she said lightly. "Music has always been a part of our family." Gheorghe chuckled, oblivious to his daughter's momentary discomfort. "Our Ana's always had a gift. Could have played in Bucharest's finest halls, I reckon." "Father," Ana chided gently, though Nicolae noticed a tightness around her eyes. Seeking to ease the sudden tension, Nicolae stood and approached a shelf lined with intricate metal figurines. "These are remarkable," he said, admiring the craftsmanship. "Your work, Mr. Marinescu?" Gheorghe beamed with pride. "Some are mine, yes, but the finest pieces are Ana's. She has a way with metal that surpasses even her old father." Nicolae turned to Ana, genuine admiration in his eyes. "You're full of surprises, aren't you? A musician and an artist." Ana blushed, the color heightening her already striking features. "Hardly an artist. Just a hobby, really." "Don't let her modesty fool you," Ileana piped up. "Ana's pieces are sought after even in the larger towns. She could make a real living from it if she wanted." "Ileana," Ana said, a warning note in her voice that piqued Nicolae's curiosity. Sensing Ana's discomfort, Nicolae smoothly changed the subject. "Tell me, Mr. Marinescu, how has the winter been treating the village? I've heard reports of hardship in some of the outlying areas." As Gheorghe launched into a detailed account of the village's struggles and triumphs, Nicolae found his gaze continually drawn to Ana. She listened attentively to her father, occasionally adding insights that revealed a sharp mind and a deep understanding of the community's needs. Later, as the family prepared for bed, Nicolae found himself alone with Ana by the dying embers of the fire. The soft glow cast flickering shadows across her face, emphasizing the mystery that seemed to surround her. "Thank you," Nicolae said softly, "for sharing your home and your family with me. It's been enlightening." Ana smiled, though there was a hint of sadness in her eyes. "It's we who should be grateful. Your kindness goes beyond the rescue, Nicolae. The way you've treated my family with such genuine respect, it's rare." "Is it?" Nicolae asked, leaning closer. "Or is it that too few take the time to see the true worth of people, regardless of their station?" Ana's breath caught, and for a moment Nicolae thought she might confide in him. But then she stood, smoothing her skirts. "It's late, and you must be tired. Let me show you to your room." As Nicolae followed her down the narrow hallway, he couldn't shake the feeling that Ana was holding something back, a secret that weighed heavily on her. He longed to ask, to offer comfort or assistance, but he sensed that pushing too hard would only cause her to retreat further. At the door to the small guest room, Ana paused. "Sleep well, Nicolae. And thank you again for everything." Their eyes met, and in that moment, the air between them seemed charged with unspoken possibilities. Nicolae found himself wanting to reach out, to bridge the gap that still separated them despite the evening's camaraderie. Instead, he simply nodded. "Good night, Ana. Sweet dreams." As the door closed between them, Nicolae leaned against it, his mind whirling. In just one evening, this woman and her family had stirred something in him, a longing for connection, for purpose beyond the confines of his title and responsibilities. Lying in the narrow bed, listening to the storm's fury gradually subside, Nicolae made a decision. He would extend his stay in the village, ostensibly to ensure Ana's full recovery and to assess the local conditions more thoroughly. But in his heart, he knew the real reason. He was not ready to let go of the tenuous connection he'd formed with Ana Marinescu. Little did he know that this decision would set in motion a chain of events that would challenge everything he thought he knew about himself, about love, and about the true nature of nobility. As sleep finally claimed him, Nicolae's dreams were filled with haunting melodies and the enigmatic green eyes of a woman who seemed to hold the key to a world he had only just begun to discover. The following days brought a gradual thaw, both in the weather and in the reserved demeanor of Ana Marinescu. As Nicolae extended his stay in the village, ostensibly to oversee repairs to his carriage and to survey the local conditions, he found himself increasingly drawn into the rhythm of village life. One crisp morning, Nicolae accompanied Ana to the village square, where a small market was taking place. The bustle of activity, so different from the formal affairs of Bucharest society, invigorated him. Villagers nodded respectfully as they passed, many stopping to exchange a few words with Ana. "You seem to know everyone," Nicolae observed, watching as Ana gently inquired after an elderly woman's health. Ana's smile was tinged with a hint of sadness. "In a place like this, we all depend on each other. It's both a blessing and a challenge." Nicolae sensed the weight behind her words. "A challenge? How so?" Ana hesitated, her eyes scanning the crowd as if searching for unseen threats. "Sometimes it's hard to keep secrets in a small village. Everyone knows everyone else's business." "And you, Ana?" Nicolae asked softly. "Do you have secrets you're trying to keep?" For a moment, Ana's guard dropped, and Nicolae saw a flash of vulnerability in her eyes. But before she could respond, a commotion near the village well caught their attention. Two men were engaged in a heated argument, their voices rising above the market's chatter. Nicolae recognized one as a tenant from a neighboring estate, while the other seemed to be a local farmer. "We should do something," Nicolae said, stepping forward, but Ana's hand on his arm stopped him. "Wait," she murmured. "Watch." As the argument escalated, threatening to turn physical, a commanding voice cut through the tension. "Enough!" Nicolae watched in amazement as Ana strode confidently toward the quarreling men. Her bearing had changed entirely. Gone was the reserved blacksmith's daughter, replaced by a woman who exuded authority and grace. "Petru Vasile," Ana addressed the men, her voice firm but kind. "What's the meaning of this? You're disrupting the entire market." The men, chastened by her presence, began to explain their grievances. Nicolae listened in awe as Ana deftly mediated the dispute, offering solutions that seemed to satisfy both parties. Within minutes, the tension had dissipated, and the men parted with grudging handshakes. As Ana returned to Nicolae's side, he couldn't hide his admiration. "That was remarkable. Where did you learn to handle conflicts like that?" Ana's cheeks flushed, but her eyes held a hint of pride. "Life teaches you many things, Nicolae. Sometimes you have to step up when no one else will." They continued their walk through the market, but Nicolae's mind was racing. This woman, who had seemed so vulnerable just moments ago, had revealed a strength and poise that would be the envy of many in his social circle. As they reached a quiet corner of the square, Nicolae gently guided Ana to a secluded bench. "Ana," he began, his voice low and earnest, "I hope you know that you can trust me. If there's anything weighing on you, anything you need help with." Ana's eyes widened, a mix of emotions playing across her face. For a moment, Nicolae thought she might confide in him. But then her expression shuddered, and she stood abruptly. "Thank you, Nicolae. But some burdens we must bear alone." Before he could respond, a young boy came running up to them, out of breath and wide-eyed. "Miss Ana! Miss Ana! You have to come quick! There's trouble at the old monastery!" Ana's face paled. "What kind of trouble, Mihai?" The boy glanced nervously at Nicolae before leaning in to whisper something in Ana's ear. Whatever he said caused Ana to stiffen, her hand flying to her throat. "I have to go," she said to Nicolae, her voice tight with barely concealed panic. "I'm sorry, but this is urgent." Nicolae stood, concern etched on his face. "Let me come with you, if there's danger." "No." Ana's response was sharp, almost fearful. Seeing Nicolae's hurt expression, she softened her tone. "I mean, thank you, but this is a local matter. I can handle it." Before Nicolae could protest further, Ana had hurried away, following the young boy through the winding village streets. Left alone, Nicolae felt a surge of frustration and worry. What was Ana hiding? And what connection did she have to the old monastery that could cause such alarm? Determined to uncover the truth, Nicolae made his way to the village tavern. If there was one place where information flowed freely, it would be there. As he entered the dimly lit establishment, conversations hushed, and all eyes turned to him. Undeterred, Nicolae approached the bar, where a grizzled old man was polishing glasses. "Good day," Nicolae said, keeping his voice friendly but authoritative. "I'm hoping you might be able to help me understand something about this village." The bartender eyed him warily. What would a marquess want to know about our humble home? Nicolae leaned in, lowering his voice conspiratorially. "I'm curious about the old monastery, and about Ana Marinescu's connection to it." A tense silence fell over the tavern. The bartender's hands stilled, his eyes darting to the other patrons, before returning to Nicolae. "Begging your pardon, my lord, but that's not a topic we discuss lightly here." "I mean no harm," Nicolae assured him. "I'm simply concerned for Ana's well-being. If she's in some kind of trouble—" A heavy hand fell on Nicolae's shoulder, and he turned to find himself face to face with a mountain of a man, his weathered face creased with concern and a hint of threat. "Some secrets are best left buried, Marquess," the man rumbled. "For everyone's sake." Nicolae stood his ground, meeting the man's gaze steadily. "And some secrets fester if left in the dark. I care for Ana, and I want to help her, but I can't do that if I'm kept in the dark." The tension in the tavern was palpable. Nicolae could feel the weight of unspoken histories and loyalties pressing in around him. Just as he thought the situation might turn ugly, the tavern door burst open. Father Petrescu, the village priest, strode in, his face grave. "Nicolae," he said, his voice carrying an urgency that silenced the room. "You need to come with me. Now." Without waiting for a response, the priest turned and left. Nicolae, sensing that this was somehow connected to Ana's sudden departure, hurried after him. Outside, Father Petrescu led Nicolae down a winding path towards the outskirts of the village. As they walked, the priest spoke in hushed tones. "I know you care for Ana," he began, his eyes fixed on the path ahead. "But you must understand, her past, it's complicated. Dangerous, even." Nicolae's heart raced. "What do you mean, dangerous? Is she in trouble with the law?" Father Petrescu shook his head. "Not exactly. But there are those who would do her harm if they knew she was here. Ana came to us seeking sanctuary, and we've protected her. But now—" They crested a hill, and Nicolae gasped. In the valley below, the old monastery stood silhouetted against the setting sun, but it was the scene before it that caught his attention. A group of rough-looking men on horseback were gathered, their leader engaged in what appeared to be a heated argument with Ana. "Who are they?" Nicolae demanded, his hand instinctively going to the hilt of his sword. Father Petrescu's expression was grim. Remnants of Ana's past, smugglers and thieves who once held sway over this region. Ana, she was instrumental in bringing them down. But it seems some have returned, seeking revenge. Nicolae's mind reeled. The gentle blacksmith's daughter, a hero who had risked everything to save her community. Suddenly, so many pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. Ana's hidden strength, her reluctance to speak of her past, the village's protective attitude towards her. "We have to help her," Nicolae said, already starting down the hill. Father Petrescu caught his arm. "Wait. Ana has handled situations like this before. We must trust her." As they watched, Ana's voice carried up to them on the wind. Though they couldn't make out the words, her tone was firm, unyielding. To Nicolae's amazement, the men began to back down, their leader casting one last venomous glare before wheeling his horse around and galloping away. Ana stood alone before the monastery, her shoulders sagging with relief or exhaustion. Nicolae couldn't tell which. Without a second thought, he rushed down the hill towards her. As he approached, Ana turned, her eyes widening in surprise and something like fear. "Nicolae," she breathed, "what are you doing here?" Nicolae reached for her hands, holding them gently in his own. "I think," he said softly, "it's time you told me everything, Ana. No more secrets." Ana's eyes filled with tears, but there was a glimmer of hope in them too. "You're right," she whispered. "It's time you knew the truth. All of it." As the sun set behind the monastery, casting long shadows across the valley, Nicolae prepared himself to hear a story that would change everything he thought he knew about the woman he was rapidly falling in love with. Little did he know that this revelation would set in motion a chain of events that would test their growing bond to its very limits. The sun had dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of deep purple and orange, as Nicolae and Ana made their way to a secluded grove near the old monastery. The air was thick with tension and the promise of long-held secrets finally coming to light. Nicolae guided Ana to a fallen log, his touch gentle but firm. As they sat, he noticed the slight trembling of her hands, the way her eyes darted nervously around the clearing as if expecting danger to emerge from the lengthening shadows. "Ana," he began softly, taking her hands in his. "I'm here. Whatever it is, whatever you've been through, you can trust me." Ana took a deep breath, her emerald eyes meeting his with a mixture of fear and determination. "Nicolae, what I'm about to tell you, it could change everything. Are you sure you want to hear it?" Without hesitation, Nicolae nodded. More than anything. Ana's voice was barely above a whisper as she began her tale. 5 years ago, this region was under the grip of a ruthless band of smugglers. They controlled everything: trade, justice, even the local government. My father, the village blacksmith, was one of the few who dared to stand against them. Nicolae listened intently as Ana recounted how her father's defiance had put a target on their family's back, The smugglers had retaliated, burning their workshop and threatening worse if they didn't fall in line. That's when I decided I had to do something, Ana continued, her voice growing stronger. I couldn't just stand by and watch my family, my village suffer. What did you do? Nicolae asked, both awed and apprehensive. Ana's eyes took on a faraway look. I infiltrated their organization, posed as a courier, gained their trust. For months, I gathered evidence, learned their routes, their contacts. It was terrifying. Every day, I thought I might be discovered. Nicolae's grip on her hands tightened. The thought of Ana putting herself in such danger made his heart race with a mixture of admiration and retroactive fear. Eventually, I had enough to bring them down. I took the evidence to a magistrate in Bucharest, one known for his incorruptibility. The arrests were swift, the trials even swifter. Most of the gang was imprisoned or exiled. Ana, that's incredible, Nicolae breathed. You're a hero. But Ana shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. A hero wouldn't have to hide. Nicolae, not all of them were caught. Some escaped, vowing revenge. That's why I've been living here in semi-seclusion, always looking over my shoulder, always afraid my past would catch up with me. Suddenly, the events at the marketplace, the whispered conversations, the protective attitude of the villagers, it all made sense to Nicolae. The men at the monastery today, he began. Ana nodded grimly. Former members of the gang. They've been sniffing around, trying to rebuild their operation. When they realized I was here, they came for revenge, Nicolae finished, a cold anger settling in his chest. Yes, but it's more than that, Ana said, her voice tight with worry. They're not just after me. They want to reclaim their hold on the region. If they succeed, everything I sacrificed, everything this village has built since then, it will all be for nothing. Nicolae stood, pacing the small clearing as he processed this information. His mind raced with the implications, the danger Ana was in, the threat to the entire region. We need to do something, he said firmly. We can't let them terrorize you or this village any longer. Ana looked up at him, hope and fear warring in her expression. We? Nicolae, this isn't your fight. You have a life, responsibilities in Bucharest. I can't ask you to get involved in this. Nicolae knelt before her, taking her face gently in his hands. Ana, listen to me. From the moment I pulled you from that overturned carriage, my life changed. I've seen the strength of this community, the courage of its people, of you. How could I walk away now? Tears spilled down Ana's cheeks as she leaned into his touch. You don't know what you're saying. The danger is something we'll face together, Nicolae interrupted. His voice was firm, brooking no argument. I have resources, connections. We can put an end to this threat once and for all. For a long moment, Ana searched his face, as if looking for any sign of doubt or deception. Finding none, she let out a shaky breath. Nicolae, I don't know what to say. Say you'll let me help, he urged. Say you'll trust me to stand by your side through this. Ana's response was cut short by the sound of approaching footsteps. Both tensed, Nicolae's hand going to the hilt of his sword. But it was Father Petrescu who emerged from the shadows, his face grave. I'm sorry to interrupt, the priest said, his eyes darting between them. But there's been a development. The village council is meeting, and they're asking for both of you. Nicolae helped Ana to her feet, keeping a protective arm around her waist. What's happened? Father Petrescu's expression was grim. Word has spread about the confrontation at the monastery. People are frightened, demanding action, and... He hesitated, looking apologetically at Nicolae. Some are questioning the wisdom of having a nobleman involved in village affairs. Nicolae felt Ana stiffen beside him. They think I'm a liability, he said, realization dawning. Some do, Father Petrescu admitted. They fear your presence might draw unwanted attention from authorities who would rather ignore our problems. Ana's voice was steel as she responded. Then we'll make them understand. Nicolae isn't just some nobleman. He's our ally, perhaps our best hope of ending this threat for good. As they made their way back to the village, Nicolae's mind whirled with plans and possibilities. He knew that winning over the villagers would be crucial, but so would leveraging his connections in Bucharest. This wasn't just about protecting Ana anymore. It was about safeguarding an entire community, about standing up for what was right. The village square was abuzz with activity as they approached. Lanterns had been lit, casting a warm glow over the gathered crowd. Whispers and pointed looks followed them as they made their way to the center, where the village elders had assembled. Gheorghe Marinescu, Ana's father, stepped forward. His face was a mask of worry and determination. "Ana, Lord Grigorescu," he began, his voice carrying across the hushed square. "We find ourselves at a crossroads. The threat we thought vanquished has returned, and we must decide how to face it." Nicolae squared his shoulders, feeling the weight of dozens of eyes upon him. He knew that what he said next could determine not only his future with Ana, but the fate of the entire village. "Good people of the village," he began, his voice clear and strong. "I stand before you not as a marquess, not as an outsider, but as someone who has come to care deeply for this community and its people." His eyes found Ana's, drawing strength from her steady gaze. "I've learned of the courage it took to free yourselves from the grip of those who would exploit you. Now, I offer my resources, my influence, to help you finish what you started." A murmur ran through the crowd. Nicolae could see skepticism on some faces, hope on others. He pressed on. "I know some of you fear that my involvement might bring unwanted attention, but I say this, it's time to bring this fight into the light. No more hiding, no more living in fear. Together we can put an end to this threat once and for all." As Nicolae's words hung in the air, Ana stepped forward, her voice ringing out clear and true. "I've spent years hiding from my past, thinking I was protecting you all. But Nicolae is right. It's time to stand and fight. We did it once before, and we can do it again." The square erupted in a cacophony of voices, some supportive, others doubtful. As the debate raged, Nicolae felt Ana's hand slip into his. He looked down at her, seeing in her eyes a mixture of gratitude, admiration, and something deeper that made his heart soar. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever dangers they might face, Nicolae knew in that moment that he was exactly where he was meant to be. The path forward would not be easy, but with Ana by his side and a community rallying behind them, he felt ready to take on whatever came their way. As the night wore on and plans began to take shape, Nicolae couldn't help but marvel at the twists of fate that had brought him to this moment. What had started as a simple act of kindness on a snowy road had led him to the brink of a battle that could change the course of countless lives. And at the center of it all was Ana, brave, beautiful, complicated Ana, who had awakened in him a sense of purpose he had never known before. The road ahead was uncertain, fraught with danger and the potential for heartbreak. But as Nicolae looked out over the determined faces of the villagers, felt the warmth of Ana's hand in his, he knew that this was a fight worth having. Whatever the cost, whatever the outcome, he was committed to seeing it through to the end. The days following the village meeting were a whirlwind of activity. Nicolae found himself at the center of a complex web of planning and preparation, working tirelessly alongside Ana and the village leaders to fortify their defenses against the looming threat of the smugglers. One crisp morning, Nicolae stood at the edge of the village square, surveying the bustling scene before him. Villagers moved with purpose, carrying supplies and reinforcing buildings. The air was thick with determination and a palpable sense of unity. Ana approached, her face etched with a mixture of worry and resolve. "The lookouts report no sign of the smugglers yet," she said, her voice low. "But we can't let our guard down." Nicolae nodded, his eyes never leaving the activity before them. "We won't. How are the preparations coming along?" "As well as can be expected," Ana replied. "But Nicolae, I'm worried. These people are farmers, craftsmen. They're not soldiers." Nicolae turned to face her, his expression softening. "No, they're not. But they have something more powerful than military training. They're fighting for their homes, their families. That kind of motivation can't be underestimated." Ana's lips curved into a small smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I just can't help feeling responsible. If I hadn't come back here—" "Stop," Nicolae said firmly, taking her hands in his. "You can't blame yourself for the actions of criminals. You gave these people hope, Ana. You showed them that it was possible to stand up against injustice. Their moment was interrupted by the approach of Gheorghe, Ana's father. The older man's face was grave as he addressed them. Nicolae, Ana, we've just received word from a trader passing through. The smugglers have been spotted gathering forces in the next valley. It seems they're preparing for a significant move. Nicolae's mind raced with the implications. How much time do you think we have? Gheorghe shook his head. It's hard to say. A few days at most, perhaps less. Ana's grip on Nicolae's hand tightened. We're not ready, she whispered, fear creeping into her voice. Nicolae squeezed her hand reassuringly before turning back to Gheorghe. Gather the council. We need to accelerate our plans. As Gheorghe hurried off, Nicolae led Ana to a quiet corner of the square. Ana, listen to me. I know you're scared. I am too. But we can't let fear paralyze us. These people are looking to us for leadership. Ana took a deep breath, visibly steeling herself. You're right, of course. It's just... The last time I faced these men, I was alone. The stakes were high, but they were personal. Now the entire village is at risk. Nicolae cupped her face gently, his eyes locked on hers. You're not alone this time. We're in this together, all of us. And that makes us stronger than they could ever be. For a moment the world seemed to fade away around them. Nicolae was acutely aware of Ana's proximity, the warmth of her skin under his hands, the flecks of gold in her emerald eyes. He found himself leaning in, drawn by an irresistible force. Their lips met in a kiss that was both tender and passionate, a testament to the bond that had grown between them in such a short time. When they finally parted, both were breathless. Nicolae, Ana whispered, her voice filled with emotion. But whatever she was about to say was cut short by the urgent ringing of the village bell. They broke apart, instantly alert. That's the warning signal, Ana said, her eyes wide with alarm. They rushed to the center of the square where a crowd was already gathering. Father Petrescu stood on the steps of the church, his face grim as he addressed the anxious villagers. Friends, he began, his voice carrying over the murmurs of the crowd. We've received word that a group of armed men has been spotted on the outskirts of our lands. It seems the confrontation we've been preparing for may come sooner than we anticipated. A ripple of fear passed through the gathering. Nicolae stepped forward, his presence commanding attention. Listen to me, all of you, he said, his voice ringing with authority. We knew this moment would come. We've prepared, we've trained, we've united. Now is the time to stand firm. He paused, meeting the eyes of those around him. I know many of you are afraid, but remember why we fight. We fight for our homes, for our families, for the right to live free from fear and oppression. Ana moved to stand beside him, her voice joining his. We've faced these men before and emerged victorious. We can do it again, but only if we stand together. Only if we refuse to give in to fear. As they spoke, Nicolae could see the change in the villagers' faces. Fear gave way to determination, uncertainty to resolve. Gheorghe stepped forward, his weathered face set with grim determination. What do you need us to do? Nicolae nodded, grateful for the blacksmith's support. We need to fortify our defenses immediately. Gheorghe, gather your strongest men and secure the village perimeter. Father Petrescu, please organize those who can't fight to prepare safe shelters in the church and other sturdy buildings. As the villagers dispersed to their tasks, Nicolae turned to Ana. We need to get a better understanding of what we're facing. Are there any high points near the village where we could observe the smugglers' movements? Ana's eyes lit up. The old watchtower on the hill. It's been abandoned for years, but it should give us a clear view of the surrounding area. Perfect, Nicolae said. Let's go. We need every advantage we can get. As they made their way through the village and up the winding path to the watchtower, Nicolae's mind was racing with strategies and contingencies. He had faced battles before, but never with so much at stake, never with civilians caught in the crossfire. The old watchtower creaked ominously as they climbed its worn steps. At the top, they were greeted by a panoramic view of the valley. Nicolae pulled out a spyglass he had brought from his belongings and scanned the horizon. There, Ana said suddenly, pointing to a distant ridge. "Do you see the movement?" Nicolae adjusted his focus, his heart sinking as he made out the figures of mounted men, their weapons glinting in the afternoon sun. "I count at least 30, possibly more hidden by the trees." Ana's face paled. "We're outnumbered." Nicolae lowered the spyglass, his mind working furiously. "Numbers aren't everything. We have the advantage of knowing the terrain, and they'll be hesitant to use their full force against a civilian population. It would draw too much attention from the authorities." "So what's our strategy?" Ana asked, her eyes never leaving the distant threat. Nicolae turned to her, his expression serious. "We need to make them believe we're more formidable than we are. If we can convince them that taking the village would be too costly, they might back down without a fight." Ana nodded slowly, understanding dawning in her eyes. "A bluff." "Exactly," Nicolae confirmed. "But for it to work, we need everyone to play their part perfectly. One mistake, one sign of weakness, and they'll see through it." As they made their way back down the watchtower, the gravity of the situation weighed heavily upon them. The fate of the entire village now rested on their ability to outsmart and intimidate a group of hardened criminals. Back in the village square, Nicolae gathered the council to share what they had seen and outline his plan. As he spoke, he could see the mixture of fear and determination on their faces. "It won't be easy," he concluded, "but I believe this is our best chance to protect the village without bloodshed." There was a moment of tense silence before Gheorghe spoke up. "We trust you, Nicolae. Both of you," he added, nodding to Ana. "Tell us what to do, and we'll do it." As the council dispersed to put the plan into action, Nicolae felt a tugging on his sleeve. He turned to find Ileana, Ana's younger sister, looking up at him with wide, frightened eyes. "Lord Nicolae," she said hesitantly, "is it true? Are the bad men coming back?" Nicolae knelt down to her level, his voice gentle but firm. "They might try, Ileana, but I want you to know that we're doing everything we can to keep you and everyone else safe. Can you be brave for me?" Ileana nodded solemnly. "I'll be brave like Ana." Nicolae smiled, ruffling her hair affectionately. "That's the spirit. Now why don't you go help your mother prepare supplies? That's a very important job." As Ileana scampered off, Nicolae felt a hand on his shoulder. He looked up to see Ana watching him, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "You're good with her?" she said softly. Nicolae stood, pulling Ana into a comforting embrace. "We're going to get through this, Ana. I promise you." As they held each other, the village bell began to toll again, this time in a steady, determined rhythm. It was a call to action, a declaration of defiance against those who would threaten their peace. Nicolae and Ana shared one last look of understanding before separating to oversee the final preparations. The next few hours would determine everything: the fate of the village, their future together, and the triumph of courage over fear. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the village, Nicolae took his position at the makeshift barricade at the village entrance. Ana stood beside him, her face set with determination. Around them, villagers armed with whatever weapons they could muster waited in tense silence. In the distance, the sound of approaching horses could be heard. Nicolae took a deep breath, steeling himself for what was to come. Whatever happened next, he knew that the lives of everyone in the village would be forever changed. The tension in the air was palpable as the sound of approaching hoofbeats grew louder. Nicolae stood at the village entrance, his posture rigid and alert. Beside him, Ana's hand tightened on the hilt of her borrowed sword, her knuckles white with tension. The villagers behind them shifted nervously, their makeshift weapons held at the ready. As the first riders came into view, Nicolae stepped forward, his voice ringing out clear and commanding. "Halt! You are trespassing on protected lands. State your business or turn back now." The lead rider, a burly man with a scarred face, reined in his horse. His eyes narrowed as he surveyed the village's defenses. "Protected lands, you say? And who might be doing the protecting?" Nicolae drew himself up to his full height, his noble bearing unmistakable. "I am Marquess Nicolae Grigorescu, and this village is under my personal protection. I suggest you and your men leave immediately." A murmur ran through the group of riders. Nicolae could see uncertainty in some of their faces, but the leader's expression hardened. "A marquess, eh?" he sneered. "And what's a fancy lord like you doing defending a backwater village?" Ana stepped forward, her voice steady despite the fear Nicolae could see in her eyes. "He's here because we asked for his help, because, unlike you, he understands the value of honor and justice." The leader's eyes widened in recognition. "Well, well, if it isn't the little spy herself. Boys, looks like we hit the jackpot today." Nicolae moved protectively in front of Ana. "I'm warning you for the last time. Leave now or face the consequences." The leader laughed, a harsh, mirthless sound. "Consequences? Look around you, my lord. We outnumber you. Your army is nothing but farmers with pitchforks. What exactly do you think you can do to stop us?" Nicolae's mind raced. Their bluff was being called, and he knew the next few moments would determine everything. He opened his mouth to respond, but before he could, a new voice rang out from behind him. "He may not be able to stop you alone," Father Petrescu said, stepping forward to stand beside Nicolae and Ana. "But he's not alone." As if on cue, the village erupted into action. Torches were lit all along the perimeter, creating the illusion of a much larger force. The clanging of metal on metal echoed through the streets as villagers banged pots and pans, simulating the sounds of an army preparing for battle. Nicolae seized the moment. "As you can see, we are far from defenseless. My men have this village fortified and reinforcements are on their way as we speak. You have two choices: leave now and never return, or face the full might of not just this village, but of my entire estate." The leader's confident sneer faltered. He looked uncertainly at his men, many of whom were now shifting uneasily in their saddles. Ana pressed their advantage. "You know who I am. You know what I'm capable of. Do you really want to risk everything on a fight you might not win?" For a long, tense moment, the only sound was the continued clamor from the village. Nicolae held his breath, acutely aware that their entire plan hinged on this moment. Finally, the leader spat on the ground. "This isn't over," he growled. "We'll be back, and next time your little tricks won't save you." With a sharp gesture, he wheeled his horse around. The band of smugglers followed, casting dark looks over their shoulders as they retreated into the gathering darkness. As the sound of hoofbeats faded into the distance, a cheer went up from the villagers. Nicolae felt the tension drain from his body, replaced by a heady mix of relief and exhilaration. He turned to Ana, finding his own emotions mirrored in her eyes. "We did it," she breathed, a smile breaking across her face like the sun after a storm. Nicolae pulled her into a tight embrace, not caring who saw. "You were magnificent," he murmured into her hair. Their moment of triumph was short-lived, however. Georgi approached, his expression grave. "They'll be back," he said, echoing the smuggler leader's parting words. "And next time, they'll be prepared for our tricks." Nicolae nodded, reluctantly releasing Ana. "You're right. We've bought ourselves some time, but we need to use it wisely." As the initial euphoria of their victory faded, the reality of their situation began to sink in. The village council gathered in the church, their faces a mixture of hope and worry as they looked to Nicolae and Ana for guidance. "What do we do now?" Elena, Ana's childhood friend, asked. "We can't keep up this charade forever." Nicolae paced the length of the small church, his mind working furiously. "No, we can't. But we've proven that we're not an easy target. That gives us leverage." Ana leaned forward, her brow furrowed in thought. "We need to take the fight to them. Cut off their supply lines, disrupt their operations, make it too costly for them to continue targeting us." "But how?" Father Petrescu asked. "We're not soldiers or spies. We're just simple villagers." Nicolae stopped pacing, a plan beginning to form in his mind. "No, you're not soldiers. But you have something just as valuable, knowledge. You know these lands, the hidden paths, the local traders. We can use that to our advantage." He turned to Ana, his eyes alight with purpose. "Ana, you infiltrated their organization once before. Do you think you could do it again?" Ana's face paled, but her voice was steady when she replied, "It would be dangerous. They know my face now. But, yes, I think I could. With the right disguise and story, I might be able to get close enough to gather the information we need." Nicolae nodded, then addressed the council. "While Ana works from the inside, we'll need to fortify the village for real this time. Georga, can you and your smiths fashion more effective weapons?" The blacksmith nodded grimly. "Give us time and materials, and we'll arm every able-bodied person in the village." "Good," Nicolae said. "Father Petrescu, I need you to be our eyes and ears. Use your connections with other parishes to gather information on the smugglers' movements." As Nicolae continued to outline his plan, he could see hope rekindling in the eyes of the villagers. They had tasted victory, however temporary, and it had awakened something in them, a determination to fight for their freedom, their homes, their future. But even as he spoke, Nicolae was acutely aware of the risks. He glanced at Ana, saw the mix of fear and resolve in her eyes, and felt his heart constrict. The thought of sending her back into danger tore at him, but he knew she was their best hope. As the meeting concluded and the villagers filed out, each with their assigned tasks, Nicolae pulled Ana aside. In the dim light of the church, her face was a study in shadows and determination. "Ana," he began, his voice low and urgent, "if you don't want to do this, say the word. We'll find another way." Ana reached up, cupping his face gently. "Nicolae, this is my fight. It has been since the day I first stood up to them. I can't back down now." Nicolae leaned into her touch, closing his eyes briefly. "I know. The thought of you in danger." "Hey," Ana said softly, waiting until he met her gaze. "I'm coming back. I promise. And when this is all over." She trailed off, but Nicolae could see the unspoken promise in her eyes. It filled him with a warmth that chased away the chill of fear. "When this is all over," he finished for her, "we'll face whatever comes next together." Their lips met in a kiss that was both a promise and a prayer. As they parted, Nicolae felt a renewed sense of purpose. They had won the first battle, but the war was far from over. The days ahead would be filled with danger, hard work, and difficult choices. But as he looked at Ana, saw the strength and courage that had first drawn him to her, Nicolae knew that they could face anything as long as they were together. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with peril, but it was also filled with the possibility of a future brighter than either of them had dared to dream. As they stepped out of the church into the cool night air, the village was abuzz with activity. Preparations were already underway, the atmosphere charged with a mix of anticipation and determination. Nicolae and Ana shared one last look of understanding before separating to oversee their respective tasks. The real challenge was just beginning, but for the first time since this ordeal had started, Nicolae felt truly hopeful. They had faced their first test and emerged victorious. Whatever came next, they would face it together, not just him and Ana, but the entire village united in a common cause. As the stars twinkled overhead, silent witnesses to the unfolding drama, Nicolae sent up a silent prayer. For strength, for wisdom, and for the courage to see this through to the end, whatever that end might be. The following days were a whirlwind of activity in the village. Nicolae found himself at the center of a complex web of preparations, his noble upbringing and military knowledge proving invaluable as they fortified their defenses and honed their strategy. One crisp morning, Nicolae stood at the edge of the village square, watching as Georgi and his apprentices distributed the newly forged weapons. The clang of metal and the determined faces of the villagers filled him with a mixture of pride and apprehension. Ana approached, her face etched with worry. "The last of the provisions have been stored in the church cellar," she reported. "But Nicolae, I'm concerned. We're asking these people to risk everything." Nicolae turned to her, his eyes softening as they met hers. "I know. But they're not just risking everything, Ana. They're fighting for everything. Their homes, their futures, their right to live without fear." Ana nodded, but the furrow in her brow remained. "And what about your future, Nicolae? Your estate, your responsibilities in Bucharest? You're risking all of that for us." Nicolae took her hands in his voice low and intense. "Ana, listen to me. Since I arrived here, since I met you, I found a purpose I never knew I was missing. Whatever happens, I don't regret a moment of it. Their moment was interrupted by Elena, who approached with a bundle of clothes in her arms. "Ana," she said, her voice tight with concern, "I've gathered the items for your disguise. Are you sure about this?" Ana's face set in determination as she took the bundle. "I have to be. It's our best chance of gathering the information we need." Nicolae felt a cold knot of fear form in his stomach. The plan they had devised was dangerous, with Ana infiltrating the smugglers' camp disguised as a traveling merchant. Despite the necessity, the thought of Ana putting herself in such peril made his heart ache. "Perhaps we should reconsider," he began, but Ana cut him off with a shake of her head. "We've been over this, Nicolae. I'm the only one who can do this. I know their operations, their hiding places. We need this information if we're going to have any chance of stopping them for good." Nicolae opened his mouth to argue further, but the look in Ana's eyes stopped him. He saw fear there, yes, but also an unwavering resolve that both awed and humbled him. Instead, he pulled her into a tight embrace, not caring who saw. "Promise me you'll be careful," he whispered fiercely. "Promise me you'll come back." Ana's arms tightened around him. "I promise," she murmured. "I have too much to come back for." As they parted, Father Petrescu approached, his face grave. "The scouts report movement in the forest to the east," he said. "It seems the smugglers are regrouping, just as we feared." Nicolae nodded, his mind already racing with contingencies. "Then we don't have much time. Ana, are you ready?" Ana took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders. "As ready as I'll ever be." The next hour was a flurry of final preparations. Nicolae watched with a heavy heart as Ana transformed herself, donning the simple clothes of a traveling merchant and applying a mixture of herbs and dirt to alter her appearance. When she was done, he could hardly recognize the woman he had come to love. "Remember," he said as they stood at the village's edge, his voice low and urgent, "if you sense any danger, any at all, you get out. The information isn't worth your life." Ana nodded, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "I'll be careful, and Nicolae, thank you. For everything." Before he could respond, she leaned in and kissed him, a kiss that tasted of fear and hope and unspoken promises. Then, with one last look, she was gone, disappearing into the misty forest. Nicolae stood there long after she had vanished from sight, his heart torn between the village that needed his leadership and the woman carrying his heart into danger. "She'll be all right, my lord." Gheorghe's gruff voice broke into his reverie. "Our Ana is stronger than she looks." Nicolae turned to the blacksmith, seeing his own worry mirrored in the older man's eyes. "I know," he said softly, "but knowing doesn't make it any easier." Gheorghe clapped a calloused hand on Nicolae's shoulder. "No, it doesn't. But we have work to do, and Ana is counting on us to be ready when she returns." Nodding, Nicolae straightened his shoulders and followed Gheorghe back into the village. The next few days would be crucial, and he couldn't afford to let his personal fears distract him from the task at hand. As night fell, Nicolae found himself in the church, poring over maps of the surrounding area with Father Petrescu and a group of village elders. They were discussing possible routes the smugglers might take when a commotion outside drew their attention. Racing to the square, Nicolae's heart leapt at the sight of a figure stumbling towards them. For a moment, he thought it was Ana, but as the torchlight illuminated the newcomer's face, he realized it was a young man he didn't recognize. "Help!" the stranger gasped, collapsing into the arms of a nearby villager. "They're coming! The smugglers! They know!" Nicolae's blood ran cold. "What do they know?" he demanded, kneeling beside the injured man. "Speak, man!" The stranger's eyes were wide with fear as they locked onto Nicolae's. "Everything," he wheezed. "They know about your defenses, your plans. Someone betrayed you." A shocked murmur ran through the gathered crowd. Nicolae felt as if the ground had dropped out from beneath him. A traitor in their midst? But who? And more importantly, what did this mean for Ana? As if reading his thoughts, Father Petrescu spoke up. "My lord, if they know our plans, then Ana is in grave danger," Nicolae finished, his voice tight with fear and anger. He stood, his mind racing. "We need to warn her, to get her out of there." But even as he spoke, Nicolae knew it might already be too late. Ana was deep in enemy territory, alone and unaware of the betrayal. The thought of her walking into a trap made his heart seize with terror. Gheorghe stepped forward, his face set in grim determination. "I'll go," he said. "I know these woods better than anyone. If Ana's out there, I'll find her." Nicolae shook his head. "No, I can't ask you to take that risk. I'll go myself." "With all due respect, my lord," Elena interjected, "you're needed here. If the smugglers are planning an attack, the village needs your leadership." Nicolae wanted to argue, to insist that nothing was more important than Ana's safety. But he knew Elena was right. He had a responsibility to these people, a duty he couldn't abandon, no matter how much his heart ached to do so. "You're right," he said finally, his voice heavy with resignation. "Gheorghe, take 2 of your best men. Find Ana and bring her back safely, please." As Gheorghe nodded and hurried off to prepare, Nicolae turned to address the gathered villagers. He could see the fear and uncertainty in their eyes, but also a steely resolve that filled him with pride. "Friends," he began, his voice carrying across the hushed square. "We've been betrayed, but we are not defeated. We've prepared for this, trained for this. Now is the time to show these criminals that we will not be intimidated, that we will not be broken." A murmur of agreement ran through the crowd. Nicolae continued, his voice gaining strength. "Tonight we stand together, for our homes, for our families, for Ana and all those who have risked everything to protect us. Who's with me?" The response was immediate and overwhelming. Cheers and shouts of defiance filled the air as the villagers rallied to his call. In that moment, Nicolae felt a surge of hope. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them united. As the village sprang into action, preparing for the impending attack, Nicolae cast one last look at the dark forest beyond. Somewhere out there, Ana was fighting her own battle, unaware of the danger closing in around her. He sent up a silent prayer for her safety, vowing that when she returned, he would never let her go again. The night stretched on, tense and fraught with anticipation. Nicolae moved through the village, offering encouragement and direction where needed. But always, in the back of his mind, was the image of Ana, alone and in peril. As the first light of dawn began to break over the horizon, he steeled himself for whatever the new day might bring. The dawn broke with an eerie silence that seemed to blanket the entire village. Nicolae stood at the makeshift watchtower, his eyes scanning the misty forest edge for any sign of movement. The weight of leadership pressed heavily upon his shoulders, each passing moment without word from Ana or Gheorghe adding to his anxiety. Elena approached, her face drawn with worry. "Still no sign of them?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Nicolae shook his head, his jaw tight. "Nothing. And no sign of the smugglers either. This waiting, it's unbearable." Elena placed a comforting hand on his arm. "Ana is strong, my lord, and Gheorghe knows these woods better than anyone. We must have faith." Nicolae turned to her, his eyes filled with a mix of gratitude and anguish. "Faith is all well and good, Elena, but I can't help feeling that I've failed her. I should never have let her go alone." "Ana made her own choice," Elena reminded him gently. "She knew the risks, just as we all do. And she would want you to focus on protecting the village, not worrying about her." Nicolae knew she was right, but it did little to ease the ache in his heart. He was about to respond when a shout from below caught their attention. "Riders approaching!" came the cry from one of the sentries. Nicolae's heart leapt to his throat as he peered into the distance. Through the thinning mist, he could make out several figures on horseback emerging from the tree line. His hand tightened on the hilt of his sword, ready for anything. As the riders drew closer, Nicolae's eyes widened in recognition. "It's Gheorghe!" he exclaimed, relief flooding through him. But the feeling was short-lived as he realized that Ana was not among them. Nicolae raced down from the watchtower, Elena close on his heels. By the time they reached the village entrance, a small crowd had gathered to meet the returning search party. Gheorghe dismounted, his face grim and streaked with dirt. Nicolae pushed through the crowd, his heart pounding. "Gheorghe, what happened? Where's Ana?" The blacksmith's eyes were heavy with regret as they met Nicolae's. "My lord, I'm sorry. We found signs of a struggle near the smugglers' camp, and this—" He held out a torn piece of fabric that Nicolae recognized with a sinking heart. It was from the dress Ana had been wearing when she left. Nicolae took the scrap of cloth, his fingers trembling. "No," he whispered, the word barely audible. "This can't be." Father Petrescu stepped forward, his face etched with concern. "Nicolae, perhaps we should discuss this somewhere more private." But Nicolae was beyond hearing. The world seemed to narrow to a pinpoint, the voices around him fading to a distant buzz. Ana was gone, captured or worse, and it was all his fault. A firm hand on his shoulder snapped him back to reality. He looked up to find Georg's weathered face inches from his own. "Listen to me, my lord," the blacksmith said, his voice low and urgent. "Ana is alive. I'm sure of it." "How can you know?" Nicolae asked, grasping at this thread of hope. Georg's eyes hardened with determination. "Because I know those bastards. They wouldn't pass up the chance to use her as leverage. And because I know our Ana, she's a fighter. She won't give up, and neither can we." Nicolae felt something shift inside him, grief giving way to a steely resolve. "You're right," he said, straightening his shoulders. "We're not giving up. Tell me everything you found." As Georgi recounted the details of their search, Nicolae's mind raced with possibilities. The smugglers' camp had been hastily abandoned, but they had left enough traces to give a general direction of their retreat. "They're heading towards the old monastery ruins," Georgi concluded. "It's a defensible position, with plenty of hiding places. If I were them, that's where I'd hole up." Nicolae nodded, a plan already forming in his mind. "Then that's where we'll go. Father Petrescu," he turned to the priest. "I need you to organize the villagers, set up a perimeter, and be ready for anything. If this is a diversion to draw us away from the village, we need to be prepared." The priest nodded solemnly. "Of course, my lord. And what of you?" "I'm going after Ana," Nicolae said, his voice brooking no argument. "Georgi, I'll need your expertise. Elena, gather our best fighters. We leave within the hour." As the others hurried to carry out his orders, Nicolae felt a hand on his arm. He turned to find Ileana, Ana's younger sister, looking up at him with tear-filled eyes. "Please bring her back," she whispered, her voice trembling. "She's all we have left." Nicolae knelt down, meeting the young girl's gaze. "I promise you, Ileana, I will not rest until Ana is safe and back with us. You have my word." As he stood, Nicolae felt the weight of that promise settle on his shoulders. It was a burden he would gladly bear, for Ana and for all those who depended on them both. The next hour passed in a blur of activity. Weapons were distributed, horses saddled, and final instructions given. As Nicolae mounted his steed, he cast one last look over the village that had become so dear to him in such a short time. "Remember," he called out to the assembled villagers, "you are stronger than you know. Stand together, watch out for each other, and have faith. We will return, and we will bring Ana home." With that, he spurred his horse forward, leading the small rescue party into the forest. The path ahead was fraught with danger, but Nicolae rode with a singular purpose that burned away all fear and doubt. As they delved deeper into the woods, the terrain became increasingly treacherous. Nicolae found himself relying heavily on Georg's knowledge of the land. The old blacksmith led them through hidden paths and forgotten trails, always moving towards their goal. "We're getting close," Georgi muttered as they approached a steep ravine. "The monastery ruins are just beyond this ridge." Nicolae raised a hand, signaling the group to halt. "We need to approach carefully," he said, his voice low. "They'll have sentries posted. Elena, take 2 men and circle around to the east. Georgi and I will approach from the west. If you see Ana or any sign of her, don't engage. Signal us and wait for my command." Elena nodded, her face set with determination. "Understood, my lord. And if we encounter resistance?" Nicolae's eyes hardened. "Do what you must to stay alive. But remember, our priority is Ana. We're not here for vengeance." As Elena and her team melted into the underbrush, Nicolae turned to Gheorghe. "Are you ready for this, old friend?" Gheorghe patted the axe at his side, a grim smile on his face. "I've been ready since the day these bastards first set foot in our village. Let's finish this." They dismounted, tethering their horses in a hidden glade, and began their stealthy approach to the monastery ruins. As they crept through the dense foliage, Nicolae's every sense was on high alert. The forest seemed unnaturally quiet, as if holding its breath in anticipation of the coming confrontation. Suddenly, Gheorghe's hand shot out, stopping Nicolae in his tracks. The blacksmith pointed silently to a patch of disturbed earth just ahead. Nicolae's eyes widened as he recognized the crude trap hidden beneath a thin layer of leaves. "They've fortified their position," Gheorghe whispered. "We'll need to be extra cautious from here on out." Nicolae nodded, his respect for the old blacksmith growing. Without Gheorghe's keen eye, they might have walked right into the smugglers' defenses. As they neared the edge of the clearing where the monastery ruins stood, Nicolae felt his heart rate quicken. Somewhere in those crumbling walls, Ana was being held. The thought of her in danger, possibly hurt, made his blood boil. "There," Gheorghe hissed, pointing to a flicker of movement near one of the broken windows. "Sentry." Nicolae squinted, making out the silhouette of a man with a crossbow. He was about to signal their next move when a commotion from the other side of the ruins caught their attention. Shouts of alarm rang out, followed by the clash of steel on steel. Elena's team had been discovered. "Damn it," Nicolae cursed. Their element of surprise was gone. He turned to Gheorghe, his eyes blazing with determination. "No more sneaking. We go in now, hard and fast. Are you with me?" Gheorghe's answer was to heft his axe, a feral grin spreading across his weathered face. "Till the end, my lord." With a nod of understanding, they burst from their cover, charging towards the monastery ruins. As they ran, Nicolae sent up a silent prayer, not for victory, not even for his own safety, but for Ana. "Hold on, my love," he whispered as they plunged into the fray. "I'm coming for you." The battle that followed was chaotic and brutal. Nicolae fought with a ferocity he never knew he possessed, his sword singing through the air as he cut a path through the smugglers' defenses. Gheorghe was a whirlwind at his side, his axe rising and falling with deadly precision. But even as they fought, Nicolae's eyes scanned frantically for any sign of Ana. Where was she? Had they moved her? Or worse, had they... No, he couldn't think like that. Ana was alive. She had to be. As they battled their way deeper into the ruins, Nicolae caught a glimpse of something that made his heart stop. There, in an upper window of what must have once been the monastery's bell tower, he saw a flash of familiar dark hair. "Ana!" he cried out, his voice rising above the din of battle. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. Then, miraculously, he heard her voice, faint but unmistakable. "Nicolae, up here." New strength surged through him. With Gheorghe covering his back, Nicolae fought his way towards the crumbling tower, each step bringing him closer to the woman he loved. As he reached the base of the tower, a burly smuggler blocked his path, a wicked grin on his scarred face. "Going somewhere, lordling?" he sneered, raising a massive war hammer. Nicolae's eyes narrowed. This was the leader, the man responsible for all the pain and suffering inflicted on Ana and the village. In that moment, Nicolae felt a cold fury unlike anything he'd ever experienced. "Get out of my way," he growled, his voice low and dangerous. The smuggler leader laughed, a harsh, mocking sound. "Make me." What followed was a duel that would be spoken of in whispers for years to come. Nicolae fought with all the skill and passion of a man with everything to lose, his sword a blur of silver against the smuggler's brutal hammer strikes. Blood pounded in Nicolae's ears as he parried and struck, each movement bringing him closer to Ana. He could hear her voice now, calling out encouragement, and it fueled him like nothing else could. In a final, desperate gambit, Nicolae feinted left, then spun right, his blade finding the gap in the smuggler's defenses. With a roar of triumph and rage, he drove his sword home. The smuggler leader's eyes widened in shock and pain. He stumbled back, his hammer falling from lifeless fingers. As he collapsed, Nicolae wasted no time. He raced up the crumbling stairs of the tower, taking them two at a time. "Ana!" he called out, his voice hoarse with emotion. "Ana, where are you?"
"Here," came her reply, stronger now. "Nicolae, I'm here."
He rounded the final turn, and there she was, bruised, disheveled, but gloriously alive. Ana's eyes lit up as she saw him, tears streaming down her face. Nicolae rushed forward, cutting through her bonds with shaking hands. The moment she was free, he pulled her into his arms, holding her as if he'd never let go. "You came for me," Ana whispered, her voice muffled against his chest. Nicolae pulled back just enough to look into her eyes, his hand gently cupping her face. "Always," he promised. "I will always come for you, Ana." Their lips met in a kiss that was both tender and fierce, a reaffirmation of life and love in the midst of chaos. When they finally parted, both were breathing heavily, but smiling through their tears. "Come on," Nicolae said, taking her hand. "Let's go home." As they made their way down the tower, they could hear the sounds of battle dying away. Elena and her team had turned the tide, and the remaining smugglers were fleeing into the forest. Georgi met them at the base of the tower, his face splitting into a wide grin at the sight of Ana. "Knew you'd be too stubborn to let these bastards keep you down," he said gruffly, though his eyes shone with relief. Ana laughed, a sound that made Nicolae's heart soar. "It'll take more than a few thugs to break me," she said, her voice tired but determined. As they made their way out of the ruins, Nicolae kept Ana close, still hardly daring to believe she was really here, safe in his arms. The battle was over, the immediate danger past, but he knew their struggles were far from over. There would be wounds to heal, both physical and emotional. There would be questions to answer, a village to rebuild, and a future to forge. But as Nicolae looked at Ana, saw the strength and love shining in her eyes, he knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The journey back to the village was slow, with frequent stops to tend to the wounded. Nicolae found himself constantly checking on Ana, reassuring himself that she was really there, really safe. As they crested the final hill and the village came into view, Nicolae felt a sense of homecoming he'd never experienced before. This place, these people, they had become his home in a way Bucharest never had. Ana squeezed his hand, a knowing look in her eyes. "It's something special, isn't it?" she said softly. "This village, these people, they have a way of getting under your skin." Nicolae nodded, his throat tight with emotion. "They do. You do." As they entered the village, they were met with cheers and tears of joy. Ileana broke away from the crowd, flinging herself into Ana's arms with a cry of relief. Nicolae watched as Ana comforted her sister, marveling at her strength and compassion even after all she'd been through. In that moment, he knew with absolute certainty that this was where he belonged. As the celebrations began and the village came together to heal and rebuild, Nicolae pulled Ana aside. In the soft glow of the setting sun, he took her hands in his heart pounding with nervous excitement. "Ana," he began, his voice soft but sure. "These past weeks have been the most challenging, terrifying, and wonderful of my life. You've shown me what true courage and strength look like. You've taught me the value of community and the power of love." Ana's eyes widened as she realized where this was going. "Nicolae," he pressed on, determined to say what was in his heart. "I know we come from different worlds. I know there will be challenges ahead. But I also know that I never want to be parted from you again. Ana Marinescu, will you marry me?" For a moment the world seemed to hold its breath. Then Ana's face broke into a radiant smile, tears of joy spilling down her cheeks. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Nicolae. 1,000 times yes." As they sealed their promise with a kiss, the cheers of the villagers rising around them, Nicolae felt a sense of peace and rightness settle over him. Whatever the future held, they would face it together, not just the two of them, but this entire community that had become their family. The sun set on a day that had begun in fear and ended in triumph and love. As Nicolae held Ana close, watching the stars come out over their village, He knew that this was just the beginning of their greatest adventure yet. The days following the rescue were a whirlwind of activity and emotion. As the village celebrated their victory and began the process of rebuilding, Nicolae and Ana found themselves at the center of it all, their recent engagement adding an extra layer of joy to the proceedings. One crisp morning, Nicolae stood at the edge of the village square, watching as the community came together to repair the damage from the smugglers' attack. The air was filled with the sounds of hammering, sawing, and the cheerful chatter of people working side by side. Ana approached, a gentle smile on her face as she slipped her hand into his. "It's amazing, isn't it?" she said softly. "A week ago, these people were living in fear. Now look at them." Nicolae nodded, squeezing her hand. "They're resilient, just like you." Ana's smile faltered slightly, a shadow passing over her eyes. Nicolae turned to her, concern etching his features. "What is it, love? Are you all right?" Ana took a deep breath, her gaze fixed on the bustling square. "I'm fine, it's just—" "Nicolae, what happens now? With us, I mean. You have a life in Bucharest, responsibilities." Nicolae cupped her face gently, turning her to look at him. "Ana, listen to me. My life is here now, with you, with this village. I've never felt more alive, more purposeful than I have these past weeks. But your estate, your title—" Ana began, but Nicolae shook his head, cutting her off. "They're just things, Ana. Trappings of a life I never truly felt at home in. You, this place. You've shown me what really matters." Tears welled in Ana's eyes as she leaned into his touch. "I love you," she whispered. "So much it scares me sometimes." Nicolae pulled her close, wrapping her in a tight embrace. "I love you too. And I promise you, we'll figure this out together." Their moment was interrupted by the approach of Gheorghe and Father Petrescu. The two men wore expressions of both joy and concern. "Nicolae, Ana," Father Petrescu began, his voice gentle. "We hate to intrude, but there's a matter we need to discuss." Nicolae straightened, his arms still around Ana's waist. "Of course, Father. What is it?" Gheorghe cleared his throat, looking uncomfortable. "It's about the traitor, my lord. The one who betrayed our plans to the smugglers." A tense silence fell over the group. In the aftermath of the rescue and celebration, the matter of the betrayal had been temporarily pushed aside. Now it loomed large once more. "Have you discovered who it was?" Ana asked, her voice tight with apprehension. Father Petrescu nodded solemnly. "We believe so. Several villagers reported seeing Vasile, the tavern keeper's son, sneaking out of the village the night before the attack." Nicolae's brow furrowed. "Vasile? But why would he—" "Greed, most likely," Gheorghe growled. "The boy's always had a taste for easy money. Probably thought the smugglers would reward him handsomely." Ana shook her head, disbelief etched on her face. "I've known Vasile since we were children. I can't believe he would do this. People can surprise you," Nicolae said softly, his mind racing. "The question is, what do we do now?" Father Petrescu sighed heavily. "That's why we came to you both. The village is divided. Some want to banish Vasile, others— well, there's talk of harsher punishment." Nicolae felt Ana stiffen beside him. He knew her well enough now to recognize the conflict in her eyes, the desire for justice warring with her inherent compassion. "We can't just condemn him without hearing his side," Ana said finally. "He deserves a chance to explain himself." Nicolae nodded in agreement. "Ana's right. We'll hold a proper hearing. Let Vasile speak and let the village decide his fate together." Gheorghe looked skeptical. "And if he refuses to cooperate, or tries to run?" "Then we'll deal with that when it happens," Nicolae said firmly. "For now, bring him to the church. We'll gather the village council and hear what he has to say." As Gheorghe and Father Petrescu left to carry out his instructions, Nicolae turned back to Ana. He could see the turmoil in her eyes, the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. "Are you okay with this?" he asked gently. "I know Vasile was your friend once." Ana took a shaky breath. "I have to be okay with it, We can't ignore what he did, the danger he put everyone in. But Nicolae, promise me we'll be fair, that we won't let anger cloud our judgment." Nicolae pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "I promise. We'll do this right, Ana, for the sake of the village and for our own consciences." An hour later, the church was packed with villagers, all talking in hushed, anxious tones. Nicolae and Ana sat at the front, flanked by Father Petrescu and the village elders. The atmosphere was tense, charged with a mix of anger, fear, and anticipation. As Gheorghe led a bound and sullen Vasile into the church, a hush fell over the crowd. Nicolae stood, his presence commanding attention. "Friends," he began, his voice carrying to every corner of the building. "We're here today to address a grave matter. Vasile stands accused of betraying our village to the smugglers, putting all of our lives at risk. But before we pass judgment, we will hear him out. Everyone deserves a chance to speak in their own defense." He turned to Vasile, his gaze stern but not unkind. "Vasile, you have the floor. Tell us why you did what you did." For a long moment, Vasile remained silent, his eyes fixed on the ground. Then, slowly, he raised his head, his gaze meeting Nicolae's. I didn't mean for anyone to get hurt," he began, his voice barely above a whisper. "They promised me money, enough to start a new life away from here. I thought they'd just rob a few houses, maybe. I didn't know they were planning to attack the whole village." A murmur of disbelief and anger rippled through the crowd. Ana leaned forward, her eyes searching Vasile's face. "Why, Vasile? Why would you want to leave so badly?" Vasile's shoulders slumped. "Because I felt trapped. Everyone here, they all have their place, their purpose. But me, I'm just the tavern keeper's lazy son. I wanted more, wanted to prove I could be something." Nicolae listened intently, feeling a mix of pity and frustration. "And you thought betraying your friends and neighbors was the way to do that?" Shame colored Vasile's cheeks. "I was stupid, selfish. I see that now. When I heard about the attack, about Ana being taken, I tried to warn you, to make it right, but it was too late." A tense silence fell over the church as everyone processed Vasile's words. Nicolae could feel the weight of expectation, of judgment, pressing down on him. He looked to Ana, saw the conflict in her eyes, and knew she felt it too. Finally, Nicolae spoke. "Vasile, your actions put this entire village in danger. People could have died. That's not something we can simply forgive and forget." Vasile nodded, his head bowed. "I know. I'll accept whatever punishment you decide. I'm sorry. To all of you. I'm so sorry." Nicolae turned to the assembled villagers. "You've heard Vasile's explanation. Now we must decide what to do. This decision affects us all, so we'll make it together." What followed was a heated debate that lasted well into the afternoon. Opinions were divided, with some calling for harsh punishment while others advocated for mercy. Through it all, Nicolae and Ana listened, offering guidance when needed, but allowing the village to work through the process on their own. As the sun began to set, a consensus was finally reached. Nicolae stood once more, his face solemn as he addressed Vasile and the crowd. "Vasile, your actions cannot go unpunished. For the next year you will work to rebuild what your betrayal nearly destroyed. You'll assist in repairing the damage to the village, tend to those who were injured in the attack, and work to regain the trust of your neighbors. At the end of that year, if you've shown true remorse and a willingness to change, you'll be welcomed back as a full member of this community." He paused, his gaze sweeping the room. "This decision wasn't easy, but it's one we've made together. It's a chance for redemption, Vasile. I hope you'll use it wisely." As the villagers filed out of the church, discussing the outcome in hushed tones, Nicolae felt a wave of exhaustion wash over him. Ana came to his side, slipping her arm around his waist. "You did well," she murmured. "It wasn't an easy decision, but I think it was the right one." Nicolae leaned into her, drawing strength from her presence. "I hope so. It's a heavy responsibility, deciding someone's fate like that." Ana nodded, understanding in her eyes. "It is. But that's what leadership is, Nicolae. Making the hard choices, bearing the weight of them. And you don't have to do it alone." As they stepped out into the cool evening air, Nicolae felt a sense of peace settle over him. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There was still much to rebuild, trust to regain, and a future to plan. But with Ana by his side and the strength of this community behind them, he felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The stars were just beginning to twinkle in the darkening sky as Nicolae and Ana made their way home. Tomorrow would bring new tasks, new decisions to make. But for now, they had each other, and the knowledge that they had taken the first steps towards healing the wounds that had threatened to tear their village apart. As they reached the door of Ana's family home, Nicolae pulled her close, pressing a tender kiss to her lips. "Thank you," he whispered. Ana looked up at him, curiosity in her eyes. "For what?" "For everything," Nicolae replied, his voice filled with emotion. "For showing me what true strength looks like. For teaching me the value of community. For loving me." Ana's eyes shimmered with unshed tears as she smiled up at him. "Always," she promised. "Whatever comes next, we'll face it together." As they stepped inside, ready to share the day's events with Ana's family, Nicolae felt a surge of gratitude. He had come to this village a stranger, seeking only to fulfill a duty. He would leave it a changed man, with a family, a purpose, and a love deeper than he had ever imagined possible. Whatever the future held, Nicolae knew that this village, these people, and most of all, Ana, was where he truly belonged. The weeks following Vasilei's trial saw a gradual return to normalcy in the village. As summer blossomed into early autumn, the community settled into a rhythm of rebuilding and healing. Nicolae and Ana found themselves at the heart of this transformation, their impending marriage a beacon of hope for the future. One crisp morning, Nicolae stood in the newly repaired village square, observing the bustling activity around him. Gheorghe approached, wiping his brow after a long morning of work. "The repairs are coming along nicely," Nicolae commented, nodding towards the nearly completed roof of the village hall. Gheorghe grunted in agreement. "Aye, we're making good progress. Though I must say, my lord, I never thought I'd see the day when a marquess would be out here swinging a hammer alongside us common folk." Nicolae chuckled, flexing his calloused hands. "Neither did I, old friend. But I've found more satisfaction in this honest work than I ever did in all my years of nobility." The blacksmith's eyes twinkled with amusement. "And I suppose the company has nothing to do with it?" As if on cue, Ana appeared, carrying a basket of freshly baked bread. The sight of her, cheeks flushed from the oven's heat, hair slightly mussed, made Nicolae's heart skip a beat. "Speaking of the devil," Gheorghe muttered good-naturedly, excusing himself as Ana approached. "I thought you all might be hungry," Ana said, offering the basket to Nicolae. The aroma of warm bread filled the air, making his stomach growl appreciatively. "You're a godsend," Nicolae said, leaning in to plant a quick kiss on her cheek. As he did, he noticed a slight furrow in her brow. "What's wrong, love?" Ana sighed, setting the basket down on a nearby bench. "It's nothing, really. Just, I received a letter from Elena this morning." Nicolae's eyebrows rose in surprise. Elena, Ana's childhood friend, had left the village shortly after the battle with the smugglers, seeking a fresh start in Bucharest. "Is everything all right?" Ana nodded, though her expression remained troubled. "She's fine, but—" "Nicolae, she mentioned some rumors circulating in the capital. About you." Nicolae felt a knot form in his stomach. He had known this day would come eventually, but he had hoped for more time. "What kind of rumors?" Ana's voice lowered, though there was no one near enough to overhear. "They're saying you've gone mad, that you've abandoned your duties to live among peasants. Some are even questioning your fitness to hold your title." Nicolae ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident in his gesture. "I suppose it was too much to hope that my absence would go unnoticed indefinitely." Ana placed a comforting hand on his arm. "What are we going to do?" Nicolae's mind raced with possibilities, each more daunting than the last. He had known that his decision to stay in the village would have consequences, but facing them now felt overwhelming. "I don't know," he admitted softly. "But whatever happens, Ana, know that I don't regret my choice. Not for a moment." Ana's eyes shimmered with unshed tears as she squeezed his hand. "Nor do I." But Nicolae, I can't bear the thought of you losing everything because of me. Nicolae cupped her face gently, his gaze intense. Listen to me, Ana. You are not something I'm losing everything for. You're everything I'm gaining. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together. Their moment was interrupted by the arrival of Father Petrescu, his face grave. Nicolae, Ana, he said, slightly out of breath. I'm sorry to intrude, but there's a matter that requires your immediate attention. Nicolae straightened, instantly alert. What is it, Father? The priest hesitated, his eyes darting between them. There's a delegation from Bucharest. They've just arrived at the village entrance. And Nicolae, your brother, is with them. The news hit Nicolae like a physical blow. His brother Constantine here in the village? This could only mean trouble. Ana's hand found his, squeezing reassuringly. We knew this day might come, she said softly. Whatever happens, I'm with you. Nicolae took a deep breath, steeling himself. Thank you, Father. We'll go to meet them now. As they made their way to the village entrance, Nicolae's mind whirled with possibilities. What could Constantine want? Was he here to drag Nicolae back to Bucharest, to strip him of his title? The delegation came into view. A group of finely dressed nobles astride magnificent horses, looking utterly out of place in the humble village setting. At their head was Constantine, his face a mask of aristocratic disdain. Brother, Constantine called out as they approached, his voice dripping with sarcasm. How kind of you to grace us with your presence. I see your rustic adventure continues. Nicolae straightened, meeting his brother's gaze squarely. Constantine, this is an unexpected pleasure. To what do we owe the honor of your visit? Constantine dismounted, his movements fluid and graceful. Come now, Nicolae. Surely you didn't think you could simply vanish into the countryside without consequences. The family name, our responsibilities. Did you forget them all for this? His eyes flicked dismissively over Ana and the gathered villagers. Nicolae felt a surge of anger at his brother's tone, but he kept his voice level. I haven't forgotten anything, Constantine. I've simply found a new way to fulfill those responsibilities. Constantine scoffed. By playing at being a peasant? Really, Nicolae, this has gone on long enough. It's time to return to Bucharest, to your real life. Ana stepped forward, her chin raised defiantly. This is his real life now. Nicolae has done more good for these people in a few months than your family has done in years. Constantine's eyes narrowed as he regarded Ana. Ah, and this must be the enchantress who's led my brother astray. Tell me, my dear, what charms did you use to make him forget his duty so thoroughly? Nicolae moved protectively in front of Ana, his voice low and dangerous. Choose your next words very carefully, brother. You're speaking to my fiancée, and the woman who helped save this entire village. A tense silence fell over the group. The other nobles shifted uncomfortably, clearly unsure of how to handle this unexpected confrontation. Finally, Constantine spoke, his voice tight with barely contained anger. This is not a discussion for the public square. Perhaps we could speak privately, Nicolae? Nicolae nodded curtly. Very well. Father Petrescu, might we use your study? As they made their way to the church, Nicolae could feel the eyes of the entire village upon them. He knew that whatever happened in the next few minutes would determine not just his future, but the future of everyone he had come to care for in this place. Inside the priest's study, Constantine wasted no time in getting to the point. Nicolae, you must see reason. This infatuation with village life, with this woman, it cannot continue. You have responsibilities to our family, to our estate. Nicolae leaned against the desk, his arms crossed. And what of my responsibilities to these people, Constantine? To the tenants and villagers who depend on us? Have you ever even considered them as more than just names in a ledger? Constantine's face flushed with anger. Don't be naive, Nicolae. We can't save every peasant in Romania. Our duty is to maintain our position, our influence. How can you do that from here? Perhaps, Nicolae said slowly, it's time to redefine what our duty means. Constantine, I've seen things here, learned things that have changed me. These people, they're not just nameless tenants. They're individuals with hopes, dreams, and an incredible capacity for resilience and kindness. He paused, gathering his thoughts. What if, instead of ruling from afar, we used our influence to truly improve lives? To build schools, improve infrastructure, provide real opportunities? Constantine stared at him as if he'd grown a second head. You can't be serious, Nicolae. Think of the cost, the disruption to the natural order. The natural order? Nicolae interrupted, his voice rising. The natural order that keeps good people trapped in poverty while we live in luxury. The order that almost allowed a band of criminals to terrorize an entire village because no one in power cared enough to stop them. He took a deep breath, forcing himself to calm down. Constantine, I'm not abandoning our family or our responsibilities. I'm trying to fulfill them in a way that actually matters. For a long moment, Constantine was silent, his expression unreadable. Then, to Nicolae's surprise, a hint of curiosity crept into his brother's eyes. You really believe in this, don't you? It's not just about the girl. Nicolae shook his head. Ana is... She's incredible, Constantine. She's opened my eyes to so much. But this is bigger than just our relationship. It's about doing what's right, about using our privilege to make a real difference. Constantine sank into a chair, suddenly looking tired. You always were the idealistic one, little brother. But have you truly thought this through? The challenges you'll face, the opposition from other nobles? Nicolae moved to sit across from his brother. I have, and I'm prepared to face those challenges. But Constantine, I don't want to do it alone. I want you with me in this. Imagine what we could accomplish together. For the first time since his arrival, a ghost of a smile tugged at Constantine's lips. You're asking a lot, Nicolae, to change everything we've ever known. I'm asking you to help me make our family name stand for something more than just wealth and titles, Nicolae said earnestly, to create a legacy we can truly be proud of. The brothers lapsed into silence, the weight of the moment hanging heavy between them. Outside they could hear the muffled sounds of village life continuing, oblivious to the momentous discussion taking place within the study's walls. Finally, Constantine spoke, his voice thoughtful. I can't promise anything, Nicolae. It's a lot to take in. But I'm willing to listen, to see what you've built here before making any decisions. Relief and hope surged through Nicolae. It wasn't a full acceptance, but it was a start. That's all I ask, brother. Give this place, these people a chance. Let me show you what I've seen. As they stood to leave the study, Constantine placed a hand on Nicolae's shoulder. And this Ana of yours, she truly makes you happy? Nicolae's face softened, a warm smile spreading across his features. Happier than I ever thought possible, Constantine. She's everything. Constantine nodded, a hint of his old, teasing manner returning. Well then, I suppose I should meet this remarkable woman properly. After all, it seems she's to be my sister-in-law. As they stepped out of the church, Nicolae felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The road ahead would still be challenging, full of obstacles and opposition. But with Ana by his side, and the possibility of his brother's support, he felt ready to face whatever came next. The future they were building, a future of compassion, justice, and true nobility, was worth any hardship. As Nicolae looked out over the village that had become his home, he knew that this was just the beginning of their greatest adventure yet. The days following Constantine's arrival brought a whirlwind of activity to the village. Nicolae found himself caught between two worlds: the familiar rhythms of village life he had come to love, and the complex political maneuvering that his brother's presence necessitated. One crisp morning, Nicolae stood at the edge of a freshly harvested field, watching as Constantine observed the villagers at work. His brother's face was a mask of careful neutrality, but Nicolae could see the curiosity in his eyes. Well? Nicolae prompted, unable to contain his impatience any longer. What do you think? Constantine turned to him, a wry smile tugging at his lips. I think, little brother, that you've managed to surprise me once again. The efficiency here, the sense of community, it's not what I expected. Nicolae felt a surge of pride. These people have taught me more about true nobility in a few months than I learned in all my years in Bucharest. They support each other, Constantine. They understand that their strength lies in unity. Constantine nodded thoughtfully. I can see that. But Nicolae, you must understand the challenges we'll face if we try to implement these ideas on a larger scale. The other nobles won't take kindly to such progressive thinking. Before Nicolae could respond, they were interrupted by the arrival of Ana and Elena, who had recently returned from Bucharest to support her friend. The two women approached, their faces flushed from the morning chill. Good morning, gentlemen, Ana greeted them, her smile warm as she took her place beside Nicolae. I hope we're not interrupting anything important? Constantine's eyes flickered between Nicolae and Ana, a hint of amusement in his gaze. Not at all. In fact, I was just about to suggest that we continue this discussion over breakfast. Perhaps you ladies would care to join us? As they made their way back to the village center, Nicolae couldn't help but marvel at the changes in his brother. The initial hostility had given way to a cautious curiosity, and Nicolae dared to hope that Constantine might truly be coming around to their way of thinking. Seated around the table in Gheorghe's home, the group fell into an animated discussion. Elena, having just returned from the capital, provided valuable insights into the political climate they would be facing. The rumors are spreading quickly, she reported, her voice tinged with concern. Many of the older nobles are calling for Nicolae to be stripped of his title. They see your actions here as a threat to the established order. Constantine leaned forward, his brow furrowed. And what of the younger generation? Surely some must see the potential in what Nicolae is proposing. Elena nodded, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. Some do. There's a growing sentiment, especially among the younger nobles, that change is necessary. But they're hesitant to act, fearing reprisal from the old guard. Nicolae listened intently, his mind racing with possibilities. Then that's where we start, he said, his voice filled with determination. We need to rally those who are open to change, show them that a new way is possible. Ana placed her hand over his, her touch grounding him. It won't be easy, Nicolae. We'll be fighting against centuries of tradition and entrenched power. No, Nicolae agreed, squeezing her hand. It won't be easy, but it's necessary. Constantine, what do you think? Can we count on your support? All eyes turned to Constantine, the weight of the moment palpable in the small room. For a long moment he was silent, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he nodded. It goes against everything we were raised to believe, he said softly. But I can't deny the good I've seen here. The sense of purpose, the genuine care for the well-being of others. It's something our family has been lacking for far too long. He straightened, his voice gaining strength. Yes, brother. You have my support. But we must tread carefully. One wrong move, and we could lose everything. Not just our titles, but any chance of implementing real change. The room erupted in excited chatter, plans and ideas flying back and forth. As Nicolae looked around at the faces of his loved ones, Ana's eyes shining with pride, Elena's determined grin, even Constantine's cautious optimism, he felt a surge of hope unlike anything he'd experienced before. Their discussion was interrupted by a knock at the door. Gheorghe entered, his face grave. Apologies for the intrusion, my lord, but there's a situation that requires your attention. Nicolae stood, instantly alert. What is it, Gheorghe? The blacksmith hesitated, his eyes darting to Constantine before settling back on Nicolae. It's Vasile, my lord. He's gone missing. A tense silence fell over the room. Vasile's redemption had been a point of contention in the village, with some still harboring resentment over his betrayal. His disappearance could spark renewed conflict and mistrust. When was he last seen? Nicolae asked, his mind already racing with possibilities. Last night, Gheorghe replied. He was supposed to help with the morning harvest, but never showed. His father is beside himself with worry. Nicolae turned to the others, his expression grim. We need to find him quickly. If he's run away, it could undo all the progress we've made in healing the village. And if something's happened to him, He left the thought unfinished, but everyone understood the implications. Another tragedy could shatter the fragile peace they had worked so hard to build. "I'll organize a search party," Ana said, rising to her feet. "We'll start with the surrounding forests." Elena nodded in agreement. "I'll speak with the villagers, see if anyone noticed anything unusual last night." To Nicolae's surprise, Constantine stood as well. "I'll come with you, brother. An extra set of eyes can't hurt, and, well, I'd like to see more of how you handle things here." Gratitude welled up in Nicolae's chest. "Thank you, all of you. Let's move quickly. Every moment counts." As they prepared to leave, Nicolae pulled Ana aside. "Be careful out there," he murmured, pressing a quick kiss to her forehead. "We don't know what we're dealing with yet." Ana's eyes met his, filled with determination and love. "You too. And Nicolae, whatever happens, remember how far we've come. This village, these people, they believe in you. In us." Nicolae nodded, drawing strength from her words. As they stepped out into the bright morning sun, he felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. But it was a weight he was ready to bear, for the sake of the future they were fighting to build. The search for Vasile stretched on throughout the day, with villagers combing the forests and fields surrounding the village. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the land, Nicolae felt a growing sense of unease. They had found no trace of the missing young man, and tensions in the village were rising with each passing hour. Regrouping in the village square, Nicolae conferred with Ana, Constantine, and the search party leaders. The atmosphere was tense, worry etched on every face. "Nothing in the eastern woods," reported one of the villagers, wiping sweat from his brow. "It's like he vanished into thin air." Constantine, who had surprised everyone with his tireless efforts in the search, spoke up. Could he have left the area entirely? Perhaps headed for one of the neighboring towns? Ana shook her head, her brow furrowed in concentration. "It's possible, but it doesn't feel right." Vasile was committed to making amends. To leave now, without a word to anyone, unless he didn't leave willingly. Nicolae finished the thought, voicing the fear that had been growing in all their minds. A hushed murmur ran through the gathered villagers. The implication was clear. If Vasile had been taken, the threat they thought they had eliminated might still be very real. Just as the tension threatened to boil over into panic, a shout rang out from the edge of the square. All heads turned to see Elena running towards them, her face flushed with exertion. "Nicolae! Ana!" she called out, skidding to a stop before them. "I think I know where Vasile might be." Hope surged through Nicolae. "Where, Elena? What have you found?" Catching her breath, Elena explained. "I was speaking with old Maria, the herb woman who lives on the outskirts of the village. She mentioned seeing a figure sneaking towards the old monastery ruins late last night. She thought it was just a trick of the moonlight, but—" "The monastery?" Ana breathed, her eyes widening in realization. "Of course. It's where the smugglers held me. If there were any of them left—" Nicolae's mind raced with the implications. They could be using Vasile to lure us out, to finish what they started. Constantine stepped forward, his face set with determination. "Then we can't waste any more time. Nicolae, what's the plan?" For a moment, Nicolae was taken aback by his brother's ready involvement, but there was no time to dwell on it. Lives were at stake. "We'll need a small group," he decided quickly. "Stealth will be crucial. Ana, you know the layout of the monastery better than anyone. Constantine, I'll need your military expertise. Elena, gather Father Petrescu and Gheorghe. We may need their influence if things go wrong." As the chosen team prepared to depart, Nicolae addressed the gathered villagers. "My friends, I know you're worried, but I promise you, we will bring Vasile home. Stay vigilant, support each other, and have faith. We've overcome greater challenges than this, and we'll do so again, together." A murmur of agreement ran through the crowd, and Nicolae felt a swell of pride at their resilience. These people, who had become his family, never ceased to amaze him with their strength and unity. As they set out for the monastery ruins, the last light of day fading into twilight, Nicolae felt a mix of determination and apprehension. Whatever awaited them in those crumbling walls, he knew that the outcome would shape not just Vasilei's fate, but the future of the entire village. Ana fell into step beside him, her presence a comfort in the gathering darkness. "We'll find him," she said softly, her hand finding his, "and whatever comes next, we'll face it together." Nicolae squeezed her hand, drawing strength from her unwavering support. "Together," he agreed, his voice low but firm. "Always." As they approached the looming silhouette of the monastery, Nicolae sent up a silent prayer. For Vasilei's safety, for the wisdom to navigate whatever challenges lay ahead, and for the strength to protect the future they were fighting so hard to build. The ruins seemed to watch their approach, ancient stones holding secrets in the deepening shadows. Whatever happened next, Nicolae knew that by dawn everything would change. The only question was whether that change would bring triumph or tragedy. With one last shared look of determination, the small group pressed forward into the unknown, ready to face whatever awaited them in the darkness beyond. The monastery loomed before them, a dark silhouette against the star-studded sky. Nicolae led the small group cautiously, every sense alert for any sign of danger. Ana walked beside him, her familiarity with the ruins proving invaluable as they navigated the treacherous terrain. "There," Ana whispered, pointing to a faint glimmer of light coming from one of the lower windows. "That's where they held me. If Vasilei is here, that's likely where they'd keep him." Constantine, who had been bringing up the rear, moved forward to join them. "How do you want to play this, Nicolae? We're outnumbered and potentially outgunned." Nicolae considered their options carefully. "We need to get eyes inside first. Ana, is there a way to get close without being seen?" Ana nodded, her face set with determination. "There's a series of old service tunnels that run beneath the monastery. They're narrow and treacherous, but they could get us close enough to assess the situation." "Good," Nicolae said. "Elena, you and Father Petrescu stay here with Georga. If we're not back in an hour, ride for help." Elena looked like she wanted to argue, but a stern look from Nicolae silenced her protests. "Be careful," she said instead, her voice tight with worry. As Nicolae, Ana, and Constantine made their way towards the hidden entrance to the tunnels, the tension was palpable. The stakes had never been higher, not just for Vasilei, but for the future of everything they had built. The tunnels were as challenging as Ana had warned. Narrow, damp, and filled with debris, they forced the group to move slowly and carefully. Nicolae could feel the weight of centuries pressing down on them, the air thick with dust and forgotten history. "Wait!" Ana hissed suddenly, throwing out an arm to stop them. "Do you hear that?" They fell silent, straining to listen. Faintly, from somewhere above, came the sound of voices. As they crept closer, the words became clearer. "Can't hold out forever, boy," a gruff voice was saying. "Tell us what we want to know about the village's defenses, and this can all be over." Nicolae's blood ran cold as he recognized Vasilei's voice, weak but defiant. "I won't betray them again. Do what you want with me." Exchanging a grim look with Ana and Constantine, Nicolae knew they had to act fast. They found a grate in the ceiling of the tunnel, likely once used for ventilation, that opened into the room above. "On my signal," Nicolae whispered, drawing his sword. Constantine and Ana nodded, readying their own weapons. With a burst of strength, Nicolae pushed the grate open and hauled himself up into the room. The element of surprise gave them a momentary advantage, and chaos erupted as they engaged the smugglers. The fight was fierce but brief. Nicolae's sword flashed in the dim light, his years of training coming to the fore. Ana moved with deadly grace, her smaller size allowing her to dodge and strike with precision. To Nicolae's surprise and pride, Constantine fought with equal skill, the brothers working in tandem as if they'd been doing so all their lives. As the dust settled, Nicolae surveyed the scene. The smugglers lay subdued or unconscious, and Vasilei was slumped in a corner, battered but alive. "Vasilei," Nicolae said urgently, kneeling beside the young man. "Can you hear me? Are you all right?" Vasilei's eyes fluttered open, focusing on Nicolae with difficulty. "My lord, you came for me?" "Of course we did," Ana said softly, joining them. "You're one of us, Vasilei. We don't abandon our own." Tears welled in Vasilei's eyes. "I'm sorry," he choked out. "They ambushed me in the forest. I tried to fight, but—" "Shh," Nicolae soothed. "You have nothing to apologize for. You stood strong, Vasile. You protected the village." As Constantine secured the prisoners, Nicolae and Ana helped Vasile to his feet. The young man swayed, clearly weakened by his ordeal. "We need to get him back to the village," Ana said, concern etching her features. "He needs medical attention." Nicolae nodded in agreement, but a nagging worry tugged at him. "These can't be all of them," he said, gesturing to the captured smugglers. Their leader wasn't here. As if summoned by his words, a slow clap echoed through the room. They whirled to see a figure emerging from the shadows, the scarred face of the smuggler leader Nicolae had fought during Ana's rescue. "Well, well," the man sneered. "The noble lord and his peasant bride. How touching." Nicolae pushed Vasile behind him, raising his sword. "It's over," he said firmly. "Your men are defeated. Surrender now, and you might still receive mercy." The smuggler leader laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "Mercy? From you? No, I don't think so. You see, I have something you want." He gestured, and two more men emerged, dragging a bound and gagged Elena between them. Nicolae's heart sank. How had they gotten to Elena? Had they been watching the entire time? "Let her go," Ana demanded, her voice tight with anger. "This is between us." The leader's eyes glittered with malice. "Oh, but it's so much more than that. You've upset the natural order of things, you see. Nobles playing at being commoners, giving the rabble ideas above their station. It can't be allowed to continue." Constantine stepped forward, his face a mask of cold fury. "And who are you to decide the natural order? A common thug preying on those weaker than yourself?" The smuggler's face twisted with rage. "I am the one who sees the truth. The strong rule, the weak serve. It's the way of the world, and no idealistic fools will change that." Nicolae's mind raced, searching for a way out of this standoff. He could see the fear in Elena's eyes, the tension in Ana's posture, the barely contained anger in Constantine's face. One wrong move, and everything could fall apart. "You're wrong," Nicolae said finally, his voice calm but filled with conviction. "The world is changing. The old ways, the cruelty and indifference, they're dying out. What we're building here, it's the future. A future where strength comes from unity, not oppression." The smuggler leader scoffed, but Nicolae pressed on. "Look around you. Your men are defeated. The village stands strong. Even now, reinforcements are on their way. You've lost." For a moment, uncertainty flickered in the man's eyes. Then, with a snarl of rage, he drew his sword. "Enough talk. If I'm going down, I'm taking you with me." What followed was a battle that would be spoken of in the village for generations to come. Nicolae and the smuggler leader clashed in a furious duel, their blades ringing out in the confined space. Ana and Constantine fought to protect Elena and Vasile, their movements a deadly dance against the remaining thugs. As the fight raged on, Nicolae found himself driven back, the smuggler's fury giving him a manic strength. For a heart-stopping moment, it seemed the tide might turn against them. But then, just as all seemed lost, a voice rang out, clear, strong, and filled with righteous anger. "Enough!" All eyes turned to see Father Petrescu standing in the doorway, flanked by what seemed like the entire village, armed and ready for battle. The smuggler leader's face drained of color as he realized the true extent of his defeat. His sword clattered to the ground as the fight left him entirely. In the aftermath, as the captured smugglers were bound and the injured tended to, Nicolae found himself overwhelmed by the outpouring of support from the villagers. They had come, every last one of them, ready to fight for their home and for the future Nicolae and Ana represented. As dawn broke, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold, Nicolae stood with Ana, Constantine, and the others, looking out over the village below. The nightmare was over, but the real work was just beginning. "What happens now?" Elena asked, her voice still shaky from her ordeal. Nicolae squeezed Ana's hand, sharing a look of determination with his brother. "Now," he said, his voice filled with hope and purpose, "we build the future we've been fighting for. Together." As they made their way down the hill, Nicolae's heart swelled with pride and love. For Ana, whose strength and compassion never ceased to amaze him. For Constantine, who had found a new purpose in supporting their cause. For the villagers, whose courage and unity had proven stronger than any adversity. The road ahead would not be easy. There would be opposition, setbacks, and challenges they couldn't yet imagine. But as Nicolae looked at the faces of those around him, his family, both old and new, he knew that together they could face anything. The sun rose fully, bathing the village in warm light. It was a new day, the dawn of a new era, and as Nicolae and Ana walked hand in hand towards their home, towards their future, they knew that the greatest adventure of their lives was only just beginning. In the years to come, songs would be sung and stories told of the noble lord who found true nobility among the common people, of the brave blacksmith's daughter who helped change the course of history, and of the village that stood strong against all odds. But for Nicolae and Ana, the greatest story was the one they lived every day, a story of love, courage, and the power of unity to overcome any obstacle. As they reached the village square, where preparations for their long-delayed wedding were already underway, Nicolae pulled Ana close. "Are you ready for this?" he asked softly, his eyes shining with love and excitement. Ana's smile was radiant as she replied, "With you by my side, I'm ready for anything." And with that, they stepped forward into their future, surrounded by the love and support of their community, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, together.